bit, but 2014 we started this, and we're a bunch of techies. We just like technology, and a couple of things I wanted to talk about based on the theme today is DevOps, and that has been kind of near and dear to me. But I just wanted to ask you guys, just a show of hands, how many of you are currently involved in a DevOps strategic initiative?
You put the quotes around it.
Yeah, I'll tell you why I put the quotes around it. All right. So, few of you. How many of you think DevOps is, a hype buzzword? All right. Good. Jimmy, you're going to talk about DevOps.
So I'm qualified to say it's a buzzword.
All right. I like that. And I agree with you. And what
It's a good buzzword.
What we have been doing, yeah. Because when I think about DevOps, I always go back like 5 years ago and think about like SOA, how awesome it was back then, and now it's shit. And no one wants. Everyone took their resume and edited SOA out of their resumes. So, anyways, going back to the point, DevOps, it's just a pure concept, right? It's just bringing Dev and Ops together, and at the end of the day, it's not just bringing Dev and Ops together so they can have fun. It's more about how do you take an idea and make that a production feature in a reliable and a consistent manner without compromising quality, right? And that's basically what we are trying to do in the market. And we are running a few programs, and everybody has this problem. Everybody does this differently. And one of the things that we are seeing is the analogy that I use is Google, Facebook, and all these big names have the same technologies that many organizations around the beltway have. I mean, we can buy the same technology. It's not the technology. It's how you do what you do with the technology that matters, right? And just bringing that innovation and enabling them is basically what we're passionate about and what we're doing. And this talk is definitely going to be focused on what Ansible is, and we'll talk about some of the use cases that we are seeing in terms of how Ansible is helping us drive that innovation and helping drive taking that idea and making that a production feature in an efficient way. There's a lot that goes into truly enabling DevOps. I mean, lots of process technologies and all such. So we may not hit everything now. I don't know what Jamie's going to talk about, other than the jokes. I'm setting the stage for you, man.
You've teed it right up. I mean,
yeah. So, but I mean, Arka is going to go a lot deeper into specifically what are the differences between Ansible 1 and 2, because we are doing some really cool stuff in Ansible 1.0, and we're excited to do the same things in 2.0 in a much more efficient way. And one of the biggest things that we're seeing in terms of trends as to how some of the organizations here are moving, and adopting DevOps is they have all their legacy monolithic applications in the data center, right? And not everything is moving into the cloud rapidly. So they at least want the developers and the lower environments to be running in the cloud. So the question is, how do you have an external dev environment and the lower environments out in the cloud? And then how do you create a portable application deployment framework to bring everything that you develop in the cloud in a rapid way back into your data center? So that was a very interesting use case that I saw. I don't know if anyone of you are in the same boat here, but we are doing some of those projects, and Ansible is playing a big role in all of that. So let me pause there, and I'm going to hand it off to Arka, and he will walk you through the technical details of everything Ansible 2.0. Cool. And I want to thank Fierce and Mix Group for hosting us. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Everybody hear me? Good.
Yeah.
How's everybody tonight?
Good.
All right. So thank you so much for spending 3 evening with us today, learning about Ansible 2.0. We are regular users of Ansible, and we are learning as much as anybody else about Ansible, why we're actually using it, and I'd love to share some of these things with you. So, first, show of hands. Who is using Ansible 2.0? Excellent.
7.
Who
I'm just counting 7.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Who is looking forward to using Ansible 2.0. Who is looking forward to having some fun with Ansible 2.0?
Fun is
So,
dangerous.
Yeah.
all right. So let's get the show on the road, shall we? Oh, I had a co-presenter. He was unfortunate to not make it.
So yeah, so Mike is in Fort Lauderdale right now. He may parachute in anytime now. So when he walks in, guys, just give him a round of applause. So it'll be fun.
Because he had been
Yeah.
in Fort Lauderdale,
Yeah.
and no one wants to do that.
Keep an eye on his guy. He might actually show up. Great guy, wonderful with Ansible, very good questions. My name's Arka. I've fluttered around with IT and cloud and hybrid infrastructure for a while. Done all sorts of things. If you need to contact me, arka@openshift.com. All right. So, first question, why 2.0? Why would you make a major revision of a software that's heavily in use? What's the impetus? Well, first of all, 3+ years of organic growth does things to software that may be harder to fix and improve. So, it became increasingly difficult to fix the bugs. It became somewhat unwieldy. And as we'll see later, there are things that just couldn't be done properly with Ansible 1.x. And I'm sure you'll all come to realize at some point or the other working with Ansible that those things, there are quite a few. Then adding features to the core became a little difficult. We actually ran into this in a recent project. We wanted to do something with Amazon, upon which Ansible has excellent support. But there are a couple things that have been kind of languishing in the extras that haven't made it into the extras yet. For example, NAT gateways and VPC peering, among one of them. There are some attempts to deal with these, but those will take some time to get in. And then extending it may be difficult. All right. Before I proceed any further, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. And I will also look to your insights as to how you are using Ansible 2. For those of you that are using Ansible 2, are you using it? What your pain points are? You're asking a lot of questions. So, first thing that happens is you have the blocks. So, earlier on, to isolate pieces of functionality in an Ansible playbook, you had to use things like tags, divide things up, you had to do includes. Blocks kind of circumvents that problem just a little bit. So you can actually centralize things. I don't have my pointer here for some reason. So you can define things on a block level that get inherited by the tasks inside of them. So if you're basically using a become statement, or you're using some kind of conditional, like a when, you can define it on a block level. And it applies to everything inside of that block. The same thing can be done when you nest blocks. You can actually have a hierarchy of blocks if you want to. I mean, I've heard of 10 levels of nesting being done, but then code gets a little complicated. The next thing that is new in Ansible 2.0 is try-catch. So you can actually define what happens if you should need to do a rollback. This was a feature heavily demanded, I understand. And people just didn't have a good plan with Ansible 1 to do a rescue or a rollback. So essentially, the rescue command and always command helps it. So if the first part, the debug message, hello world, that runs okay, then it moves on to always. But if it does not, then the rescue steps take place. So you can actually write rollback code in the rescue block. Everybody good so far? And you can actually define, in the always block, you can define things that run regardless. So if it works, if it doesn't work, you can still define that in always. And it will always run at the end. The next thing solves a long-standing problem with Ansible 1.x. So in Ansible 1.x, the variable, defining variables and using variables inside of playbooks can get a little unwieldy because variables can expand scopes. In this case, you can actually define a variable inside a block and acts inside the block. You won't be able to, for example, in example 2, when you call it inside of the block, it will give you the value that is defined. Well, call it outside of the block, it will just say undefined because it doesn't cross the block. Essentially, it's a local variable. Questions so far? Moving on. Error messages have gotten slightly better. For those of you that have been using Ansible 2.0, it shows you where the location of the error is. It gives you some feedback as to how you can solve that error. And this is, of course, helpful. But execution strategy. This is classic Ansible. Statement 2 executes after statement 1, statement 3 executes after statement 2, and so on and so forth. But you also have another way of doing things in Ansible 2. Imagine everybody queued up at a racetrack, just starting to run. They're all going to take off, and the fastest runner takes off first. Now imagine 5 machines in the cloud. 2 of them have 20 updates to run. 3 of them have maybe 3 updates to run. In the classic Ansible linear execution model, what happens is the 3 that would run updates faster would have to wait until the 2 that have more updates finish running their updates. Essentially, it's a queued system. Even if you have forks, you're still going to run up against some problem. In the free execution mode, you essentially are running all the tasks at the same time as fast as possible without waiting for the other hosts. So if you're executing a playbook against a set of hosts and a few of them run faster than the other hosts, the faster ones are going to finish first. Now, if you need a strategy that is not developed yet, roll your own. Write your own plugin. The system makes it easy to write your own strategy plugin. So you can literally hopscotch all over your page if you want to, if that's what solves your need. But it allows you to define your own execution strategy besides linear and free. Those ship with Ansible 2. So this is a really important feature, runtime evaluation. Earlier on, if you were using an include, it was treated as a preprocessor thread. So you would basically process that before the playbook actually started running. So if you had things like groups, backs, variables that you need to leverage, none of that was actually seen by an include. Now what happens is the execution is actually inside the logic of the. So essentially, it's no longer a pre-processor task. It works as the playbook runs. So you can actually take advantage of anything that's been declared in an included file. or in inventory, for example, to basically take advantage of everything. So far, so good, everybody? No questions so far? Awesome. You can actually do a lot with pulling facts directly into the playbook. Earlier on, you have to basically write your playbook with conditionals to see what fact applies to it. Now you can actually directly embed the fact in the GG2 tag, the mustache tag. You can call facts directly inside it, which is a great feature. It reduces the volume of code that you're going to have to write for a given task. Variable management has changed a lot. Earlier on, if you look at the Ansible code, before 2.0, you will see variables being treated kind of in a slapshot manner. So you basically run certain variables in a certain way, certain variables are plugged into other places. There was no consistent treatment of variables. Now, all variables are treated at the last possible segment. When you're running the playbook, all the variables are basically leveraged at the last possible moment. So, if you declare a variable in runtime, you will have it to deal with at the last possible moment. So, variables aren't flattened till the playbook actually runs, which is a great idea because if you're declaring, for example, in dynamic inventory, you're spawning machines, and you're basically pulling that back in as a new inventory list to run a command on, you would actually have that to run when you're running the playbook. You don't have to skip over it just because it isn't included in the inventory. There is a meta command that we'll get into later that actually helps you refresh the inventory. We'll get there. So, in the original Ansible, you had 5 levels of variable precedence. So, the first things that were interpreted were the extra vars, then you have pretty much everything else in the playbook. So there was some voodoo going on in the back. Essentially, people were making conjectures as to what each variable, when it's declared, what its value is going to be. And then you have the inventory variables, and then you have the facts, and then you have the role plays. Now you have no less than 16 different variable precedences. So you know exactly when a variable is going to be parsed, and what order to parse them. We'll get into that later, but this might actually break a couple playbooks that you might have written early on. So just remember this. We'll come back to this slide in a little bit. Because if you see your variables acting funny, if you see your variables not being parsed in the order that you had originally written it in, look for the precedence. Look at how you have to find the variables where you're basically parsing them. That would actually help. Over 200 new modules and countless improvement on existing ones. Including Windows, they actually have active Windows development stuff right now. And there are dozens of new inventory scripts, callbacks, lookups, other plugins. And plugins have changed a little bit. We'll get to that in a bit, but I'm getting it over myself. One of the best features that we love at Openshift is the package launcher. You basically had to decide if you had a system that had multiple distributions going on, and you had to decide which one applies in a given playbook. You have to basically write a conditional statement. So if the Ansible underscore OS underscore family equals Debian, you do a certain thing. You include a certain playbook, or you do a certain command, you run apt. If you are using Red Hat, you would be using Yum, but you have to do that with conditional. This actually takes care of that. You just declare package, the name of the package and the state. That's it. There is a thing to consider when you use this though. Package names are not the same across distributions sometimes. And you have to be cognizant of that fact, because if you say HTTPD, it might not be Apache 2 in DevOps, so it's not the system's fault. You basically didn't write it.
Why would anyone ever use, not Red Hat?
I'm just asking. Is that Jamie? Okay.
That is a splendid question.
I use that. You're killing me.
Yeah, we sometimes come across places where we have multiple distributions running all together.
Confused
Right?
places.
I thought we all understood
Oh,
too.
So, Red Hat at the house.
Monoculture, man.
All right.
Security through multiple layers. Right.
Like Shrek.
So, little line down there. If your automatic detection of distro isn't working, you can override that by specifying the package in the use equals parameter. You can say use equals yum, use equals app, or whatever. But most major distributions are covered. I've successfully used that against human app, but your mileage may vary.
Is there anyone here using Yas? Is there any SUSE folks around?
It used to be on my previous program.
All right. Awesome. Good. No SUSE. Awesome. Halfway home.
It's a BSD boxes.
My virtual hat off to you. Awesome. So, I was talking about the refresh inventory meta command. So essentially what that does is if in the middle of the playbook you need to refresh dynamic inventory for some reason, this will help you do it. You call this and the inventory is reread. If you have a cached inventory that's overridden, it's reread and rebuilt. The inventory is rebuilt, and then from that point on you have a new inventory. This is what really helps when you're launching a lot of instances and then working on those instances. Earlier on, we had to basically split the playbooks, right? So you have a playbook, no instances, you have a playbook with instances, and then kind of pretend that something happened in the middle. You don't have to do that anymore. You can actually do a refresh inventory in the middle of the playbook, and will basically go ahead and get everything in line for you to run your commands on. So essentially, it reloads the inventory when you want. Now, you all used get URL, right? Get URL, some address, source, destination, here's where you plant the file. And then you had to use unarchived to open that file up. In 2.0, you can actually get rid of the get URL. You don't have to do that anymore. Essentially, you can basically plug in a URL, FTP, HTTP, HTTPS, anything, into the source of unarchived and download the file and unarchive it in one fell swoop. So that saves some coding. Also, among the many things that have been deprecated in 2.0, actually sudo is one of the things that has been deprecated. So they actively encourage you to use become and not sudo. Well, the reason is that there are many different ways of privilege escalation besides sudo. I mean, Ansible supports a lot of them. So you would, if you need a specific method of privilege escalation, you would use become underscore method equals whatever method you're using, SU, whatever it is. And then you call become equals yes, become colon yes. And that would actually use that method to escalate your privilege to run a script. So far so good, everybody? Just checking. Nobody's going to sleep yet? Good. You thought it was all good news, huh? Well, it is good news and it is not so good news. If you're trying to pull 1.x into the 2.0 work, certain things will work, certain things may not work, certain things will not work. This is actually about those things. Using dynamic includes, you see, we talked about dynamic includes changing. We talked about dynamic includes working not as a preprocessor directive, but as a part of the playbook, right? When the playbook is running, it's actually running all the includes. That changes things a little bit. So, if you have a couple of includes and your included file includes tags, and you run -- list tags, all your tags may not show up. That's not a fault of Ansible, that's just the fact that it's not run as a preprocessor directory anymore. It's actually inside the playbook, so it will not run. In those cases, you may not be able to see all the tags that are listed in the included. Same thing goes with handlers, pretty much for the same reason as above. And loops inside included files that are using a loop, that can get a little funky. I could give you an example, but there are people that have done that already on the internet. My advice would be not to use a loop within a loop in an include situation, because that can get somewhat difficult to run. Then you have to do set_fact and all sorts of things to make it work. Kind of take the variable out of the equation, then run the loop, put the variable back in. So best not to do this. Let me just put that.
I'm sorry. Are you saying that the included file, if the included file has a loop, then you've got a problem?
Yeah, because if you have a loop inside of an included file that then goes inside another loop
Okay.
in the parent file, you'll have trouble with the loop, because just the way the playbook is read in, because earlier on, the playbook would be read before the script executes.
Okay.
Now, it's no longer so, it's actually part of the script. So that's why you'll have funky values coming through. Essentially, there is a way around it. You use set_fact, and you give it another name. Then you kind of, essentially what you're doing is you're removing the value of the variable. You're removing the variable from circulation, putting it in another name, and then calling it from the outside. That would actually work. But just to keep things simple, best not to use that.
But as long as the file that includes
Yeah.
the file that may or may not have a loop, and it doesn't itself have a loop, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll be fine. It's basically a loop within a loop.
Okay.
So you could get into loop inception, but that's another story. All right. So, playbooks and roles. These are the two things that they prioritized for compatibility when they wrote Ansible 2.0. Ansible 2.0 is a major rewrite. They basically wrote a lot of the functionality from scratch, and these are the two things that were actually considered to be the most important to retain compatibility. Anything else? Never. Now, people have asked, is the compatibility really 100%? Not really. I've heard figures from 96% to 98.5% based on what you're doing with dynamic includes and some other variable management practices. There were things that you could write before that don't really work in Ansible 2.0. We'll get to that in a second. For example, the idiomatic declaration down below. And like I've already said, watch your variable precedence. If you see that a variable is not being interpreted correctly, go back to the 16-step program. Just look at it and see if you're actually writing correctly. Most of the time, your problem would be in the variable precedence. If you're using variables very heavily and you're set variables and get variables, things that you normally would do in 1x, not work exactly the same. This little piece of code. What's wrong with this piece of code? Anybody?
It's ambiguous.
How?
You don't know if it's a variable or if it's a string.
But I mean, isn't that Python though?
Yeah, I'm just checking if people fell asleep. You know, you gotta do that sometimes.
You want to flush them in one last time? Blink the lights like the Kennedy Center? I was 12 and went to some show at the Kennedy Center, didn't know what the blinky lights meant.
That means to run to get the last little bit of champagne or wine.
Exactly. Well, I was 12, so I didn't do that, but I got in a lot of trouble anyway. All right, you guys come on in and have a seat. Well earned, pizza and beer.
That's right.
It's Thursday, we've made it to the end of another week.
Well,
It could all still go wrong tomorrow.
No, it can't, because I'm on. Red Hat Spring Holiday / Good Friday.
Nice.
that said, it is not a 3-day weekend, so it shouldn't go wrong.
Yeah. All right. So before we get going, just want to say thanks again, real quick, to Fierce for sponsoring the pizza and beer, to Emmix for giving us a room to hang out in, to Atimo for giving us a talk on a lot of things that I've got to rethink before I move to 2.0 because my playbooks are a hot mess. And just thanks to everybody. Get going. We're gonna kind of DevOpsy. I kind of wanted to. I always try to tell a story when I'm in front of a crowd. I have more fun that way. I don't know about you guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about how I define DevOps in my journeys. I want to compare it to the way you guys are defining it. And then a story about some stuff that, some workflows that I've developed for myself that I think are kind of cool and I want to toss out there to get a little feedback from y'all to see what you think. So my name is Duncan. I'm a cloud SA at Red Hat, so I work for the sales team as sort of the cloudy guy. That's my email, that's my Twitter feed. Completely shameless plug. I have 499 Twitter followers. Like 7 of them are legit. The other 492 are, you know, get 5,000 Twitter followers. But I need one more. Somebody hook a brother up while I'm talking. I'd really, just to get 500. Personal, completely arbitrary goal. All right, so I use slides.com a lot. If you guys want to hit there, you can actually follow on your laptop or your phone. If not,
500.
yes. Well, I'm done. I'll see y'all later. So this QR code actually links back to this. It will actually follow along as I'm going today. Not a lot of people have laptops out, so I'm not too worried about it, but I always throw it out there. You can also just go to that URL. It's really hard to read on the screen. But give everyone a free count too if anyone wants to click on that one Mississippi to hippopotamus / All right, we're moving. All right, so I never get up in front of a crowd of people without an agenda. I think that's rude to everyone, so we do have one today. We always have a few ground rules. We're going to talk about defining DevOps, both in theory and in the real world, out in reality, that harsh thing we all deal with. We're going to talk about the benefits of using DevOps. Warning, this is a shameless Red Hat plug. So we'll talk about Red Hat for a couple of minutes. They wouldn't pay for the hotel room last night if I didn't do a shameless Red Hat plug. We're going to talk a little bit about how we can take DevOps and get a little better at it using some tools that a lot of us hopefully are already using. Automate software delivery, automate infrastructure changes, emphasize collaboration, that's always an important one. And then the stuff that I think is actually kind of cool is my little story, that the workflows I've developed using actually Ansible and some other stuff that I want to toss out there to see what you guys think about. So straw poll, who in here's business is doing something they call DevOps? Almost every hand went up, awesome. How many people think what they're doing is actually DevOps? Not quite as many hands went up. So what's the biggest, like, is it just being paid? Did you guys drop a tool in place and then say, okay, now we're doing DevOps? Did you forget the philosophy part of it? What's the deal?
The whole thing.
The whole thing? You just think it's bunk?
Oh, no. How
That's a
we're
legitimate
implementing
attitude.
it. How
What?
it's being implemented.
How so, and this is your turn. How is it being implemented?
A disconnect between development and operations, so it's kind of hard to have.
So you never kind of bridged the gap.
Not effective.
You never got to the philosophy part. Okay,
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Is that kind of the rule for most people? We threw some tools in place. We said we were going to have some meetings, and we had some meetings. True story. Back when Agile was, the proto DevOps, we just said we were being Agile. I had a VP at a media company I worked at that had scheduled a meeting with every developer and every engineer. I was an admin. It was called Servers, Software, and Synergy. Swear to God, I couldn't make it up. The only thing that came from it is that everyone in the company, every time they said the word synergy, they made jazz hands. That was the only benefit the meeting ever had. So it was like we went to the synergy meeting. It's the small victories. And then we'll have a little bit of Q&A. So a little bit about me, because I like to talk about myself apparently. I've been at Red Hat for a little over 4 years. For most of that time, I was a TAM. Anyone have a Red Hat TAM? Everyone needs a Red Hat TAM, whether you hate one or not. Talk to Danny after that. I live in the middle of nowhere outside of Richmond, Virginia. This is actually my cell phone at my home desk, that blue dot. That's the nearest road. That's my driveway. That's my backyard. That's the back end of my. I live out in literally the middle of nowhere. So I get 3 meg DSL, but I open the front door at night and see the Milky Way. So I think I'm winning. I'm as close as Red Hat comes to being a cloud generalist. So I'm a cloud SA. So I talk a little bit about OpenStack. I talk a little about Openshift. I'm a containers guy. I can talk a little bit about our satellite stuff and systems management, configuration management. I'm a big Ansible fan. So I kind of dabble in all of those cloud enabling products. And that is currently my favorite sticker. It is on my laptop. There is no cloud, just someone else's computer. And then, of course, HTTR. For the first ever that it would always say RG3 is gonna have a monster year. Pretty sure I'm the jinx. Sorry about that, but I'm pretty sure that was my fault. So now it's just HTTR, and I'm not gonna saddle cousins with my jinxing. So ground rules, we always have to have a few ground rules before we stand here talking. So this is a discussion, not a lecture. I'm already trying to get you guys to talk. Me up here for a half hour is boring for me, and it's boring for you. I care about being boring for me. If you know more about it or have a different opinion about something, be vocal. Again, this is DevOps, this is philosophy. This is as close as IT ever gets to philosophy. If you have a different opinion, chime in. At the end of the day, it's all like having some new facts and having a couple of laughs, so let's do that. Again, forewarning, this thing is riddled with really bad jokes. That's kind of how I go. Just heads up. Wikipedia. DevOps is a culture, movement, or practice that emphasizes collaboration and communications of software, blah, 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 while automating processes of software delivery and infrastructure changes.
I wrote that today.
Did you? That was you? I copied it 2 days ago, so you stole it from somebody. So DevOps, everyone has this thing. Almost every hand went up when I said that. Whose company says they're practicing DevOps? So we all are doing something that is emphasizing collaboration and automating software delivery and infrastructure changes. Obviously, that's a pretty natural tie-in with Ansible, and we're going to get there in a couple of minutes. So that's me singing around the campfire. And everyone, I always say, DevOps to me isn't some kumbaya, everyone singing around the campfire. That's the best comb over I've ever seen in my life. That's better than the drunk comb over. So that's sort of the Wikipedia singing around the campfire. In the real world, and tell me if this sounds familiar, you have your business guy, you have your developer. Notice he's wearing his ironic glasses. And he says, we need to develop better features for more people, we need to do it faster, we need to do it for less money. Anyone ever heard, who's in here on the dev side of the house? You guys heard that before?
All the time.
Pretty much it's kind of your MO. All right, and then we got security. And they talk to the operations guys. Notice, no hair, beard, that's me. We need to scan more things and be more secure and faster, and we need to spend less money doing it. Who in here is on the opposite side of the house? Sound familiar? So these two guys get going together. Gears start turning. We end up in the Thunderdome. Traditional IT is the Thunderdome. It's an adversarial, it's designed to be adversarial. You know, waterfall, the old stuff. But my IT guys have one agenda, my dev guys have one agenda, my ops guys have a completely different agenda. You know, develop features, be secure. Without some collaboration in the middle, those are completely divergent faults. Thunderdome, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. And you either be a secure, you're either a secure shop or you have cool features. You never have both. So the definition I've come to accept over time in DevOps, and I've been in a lot of places and talked to a lot of customers at Red Hat that have lots of different takes on what DevOps is. DevOps is a philosophy and a collection of tools. Committing to the tools lets you adopt the philosophy. It doesn't make you adopt the philosophy, but it gives you the opportunity to adopt the philosophy. if I'm automating my infrastructure, if I'm automating my software changes, then I can increase collaboration. When you're doing DevOps correctly, your devs don't have to be bad admins as much. You developers, how many times do you need root on a box just because your admin will let you do something? How many times you've asked for root on a box because you wanted to do something your admins wouldn't let you? Your operations team don't have to be bad developers as much. Ops guys, how many languages have you had to learn on Google to figure out what in God's name they're trying to do /opt something? Yeah, you laugh because it's funny because it's true. So when you're doing DevOps right, your developers don't have to be bad admins. Your admins don't have to be bad developers. Successful DevOps makes your different teams want to kill each other less often. That's it. There's no singing around the campfire. It makes me hate my admin less. My admin hates me less. Because we put a set of tools in the middle that lets me abstract out the conflict. And obviously I'm going to say that's containers, but there's different takes on it. Should reduce work, and this is in red, so it means I'm joking. Heads up, red means joke. Should reduce workplace violence. Nothing should replace workplace violence. We want to go from this. One of the best pictures I found this week. That's my favorite part. Kristen Wiig looking very intent about this fight with the guy with Bill Hader with the Post-it note. And we end up here. Sort of, but not really. I told you there was a hashtag truth. No shop should ever be, let's sit around in front of our pretty little terminals and toast champagne at 9:30. Maybe Danny does that sometimes when he makes his number, but
I'm seeking help, thank you.
Exactly. For all of us, Danny, for all of us. So how do we get there? The short version. So everyone said that they were supposed to be doing DevOps. Very few people said they were doing DevOps. How do we get there? And this is the shameless plug division. I may be a little biased, warning again, joke. That's how you get there.
Well, yeah.
I told you, shameless plug. It is, I know, right? Go fig. And I say this half joking, but what we're doing, and this guy, now you work at VeriSign.
Yes.
Yes. We were joking about it before the first talk, and he was saying that one of our tools, Rev, which is Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization, he asked some guy, well, where are the graphs like I get in VMware? And they don't exist. There's not a performance button where I can go see how my VMs are doing in Rev. And it's by design. Because we don't expect you to just use Rev. We don't want you to just use Rev. We want you to use OpenStack and Rev, and maybe even some VMware and some Amazon. And apparently someone told me I'm friends with Microsoft now, so we want to use Azure. So all of our performance buttons, all of our metrics are collected up into a thing called CloudForms, which is right here. So you can see all of them in one place. I don't want you to have to go to 8 different tools to see one set of metrics. So all of that to say, in this half-joking manner, Red Hat's tools are designed to do that collaboration, to enable that collaboration, to let you find different sets of tools that make it take advantage of you, to enable these things that we're calling DevOps. We're giving it a whirl from the get-go. We're trying to build out a suite of tools to let you do that. All right, shameless plug, almost over. Automate software delivery. Looking back at the Wikipedia definition, it said 3 things. First one was automate software delivery. A thing called Openshift. Who played with Openshift? Way more hands. Who's played with Red Hat Atomic? Ooh.
Because of Openshift.
My favorite t-shirt currently. All right, so Atomic. So Openshift is platform as a service. And platform as a service, if in the NIST definition, which is a little inaccurate just because it's a little dated, platform as a service automates software delivery by being not only a place to run your code, and we were talking a little bit about this too, but it comes complete with a continuous integration, continuous delivery, which is a core tenet of being DevOps. Automate software delivery. Have Jenkins is what that short version is into. And OpenShift has Jenkins built in, has the ability, and it's running all in containers, running Docker containers in OpenShift 3. And if you've not played around with Docker a ton, it says there's the ability to, when I build my code, I build a container holding my code. So instead of, who's got dev, test, stage, all of those different environments for the software they make? whose dev looks like they're staging and they're testing their production? You're lying. One hand went up, and I'm pretty. Where do you work? Can you not say? Work here-ish? Yeah. Okay. So there's always little tweaks. We're using last generation servers. We're doing 64 gigs versus 12 gigs, or something is different, and I have to tweak my code just a little bit to go from dev into staging into testing and then finally into production. Well, if you have a container, if it'll run Docker, you can run the container. So I'm actually doing code promotion. I'm not rebuilding my code 3 or 4 times and hoping what I build for production mimics what I ran in testing, because it has been tested. I massively increased my confidence that my code's going to function as expected in production. So Openshift is a full-on platform as a service. And then Atomic, if you have your own CI/CD, if you have your own set of tools that are doing a lot of that already, Atomic is an operating system that is stripped down to the bare bones. All it will do is run containers. That's all it is. So all it can do is keep itself alive and launch containers for you. So you have a way smaller threat vector, you have way fewer lines of code, your patching is way faster. For a lot of other reasons, Atomic is awesome. So automating software delivery, containerize all the things. Integrated container registry also comes in, not Red Hat Atomic Host, but our Atomic Enterprise platform that we're going to release, not tomorrow, but also cooked into Openshift. Integrated Jenkins for CI/CD, and that's an Openshift. The ability to run legacy apps in containers within limits inside Atomic. Promote the same code through all of your environments, like we were just saying, mine explodes. If I didn't have to, I spent a fair portion of my life as an everyday engineer figuring out how to get the code to build in each of my levels of testing, because they were just completely different. So, automate infrastructure changes. That's the second core tenet of our Wikipedia definition of DevOps. Red Hat Satellite, consistent software sources. Be able to define your own content flows, be able to define your own repositories. Configuration management as code. Satellite uses Puppet. And I had a discussion with the sales rep today. Puppet is configuration management. Ansible is infrastructure deployment. You can get to the other one with one of those tools, but you start to get hacky pretty fast. Consistent promotion paths. There's a concept in Red Hat Satellite of content views, where I can apply configuration sets, and I can apply channels, and I can apply these all the way through in concert with how I'm running my containers. Red Hat CloudForms. CloudForms, if you haven't heard of ManageIQ or CloudForms, ManageIQ is the upstream version. Coolest tool out there. Best Swiss Army knife I've ever seen. Manage the entire life cycle. Who's a big VMware shop? Who's got VMware sprawl? Who's got VM sprawl? Who has a workflow to effectively retire virtual machines once you're done with them? No answer. So everyone has VM sprawl. Whether you know it or not, maybe you just don't know you've got it, but you've got it. So manage the entire life cycle. Not only can we spin them up efficiently, we can manage what they're doing while they're doing work, and then we can get rid of them efficiently. For licensing, for chargebacks, for showbacks, that becomes pretty important. CloudForms does that out of the box. It does it for VMware, it does it for our own Rev and OpenStack, it does it for Azure, and I think Google Compute in the next update. Do all of these different things. It's massively awesome. Chargeback, showback, and it lets you get rid of stuff you don't need anymore. Pretty cool stuff. Business intelligence and new provisioning methods. Who's got it from the ops guys? You got the developers, stop listening. For the ops guys, who has a developer that drives them absolutely nuts? Requesting 4,000 VMs with 18 gigs of RAM each, 3 terabytes of hard disk, and he needs 6 of them a day.
Is there a different kind of developer?
Oh,
Burn!
I'm just kidding.
It's funny because it's true. You take something like CloudForms, you can set up availability pools. You can set up business logic that Jimmy, the developer, sure, you can have as many VMs as you want, but they cap out at 2 gigs of RAM and 5 gigs of disk and 2 CPUs, and they destroy themselves after 30 days. Build all of that logic into your workflows. And then there's this company called Ansible. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm relatively recently, oh my God, I was one click early. Damn it, it's a new day. Allows me to define and deploy my infrastructure as code. Awesome. Hey, everyone here, you hear it in Ansible, you know how awesome Ansible is. I'm not even going to belabor the point. But oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So, and then that last one, emphasize collaboration. That's the third tenet of what DevOps is. So no, it's not Slack. In fact, in Red Hat, we use IRC for 95% of our communication. On my actual laptop screen is an IRC terminal. I use command line IRC. I'm that old school. I get geek points tonight. So Red Hat Solution Stack, designed to interact and be stackable. That picture that I made a joke about, that's the way it's designed. It's designed to be used that way. They're complementary technologies. You do virtualization, you do OpenStack, you do all these things. Access to redhat.com, collaboration, hey, how you doing? I promise my plug's almost over. Thousands of upstream communities. You know, we are, there. It's Red Hat and two guys in Denmark that maintain all of those weird little projects that come in Linux core utils that all of us depend on every day. There's always two guys in Denmark, I don't know what they're doing. And open source is the embodiment of collaboration. So not only collaboration between your teams, but I really think DevOps is collaboration with outside communities to make your code better, faster. And of course, DevOps, obviously, your dev guys and your ops guys have to talk together and do that better. But I even want to take it a step further because I think that's even more important. My developers, my operators need to talk to one another. My developers, my operators need to talk to outside communities to make their jobs better, make their code better, faster. I think we all benefit from that. So my story, we're getting to the tail end of it. And if we're done in 12 minutes, I apologize if this was a 12-minute day, because again, this is brand new stuff. But we're getting towards the tail end of it. Last year at Red Hat, I helped start up a new team called the Cloud Success Architects. What we did for all of the emerging technology, OpenStack, Openshift, all of the container stuff, what we figured out in Red Hat was all of these new technologies that were so close to the upstream. Our sales guys would go outside and do a POC. You know, they would do the install, do an OpenStack install, do a whatever install. That would end. You know, the sales guy would leave because he went off to his next sale. There'd be some period of time. And then the customer would call in angry because they've broken this new technology. And our support engineers had no clue how they got there. And with OpenStack, it's a pretty big thing. Figuring out why your keystone is so hopelessly jacked up is a pretty important thing. And if you don't know it walking in, getting there takes a lot of effort. So we actually built a team to help, to be in that middle, to be in that dark period, to be in that gap, to help our customers figure out and document for our purposes and for our customers why your keystone ended up this way. Why are you doing this weird thing with Neutron? You know, that you hit this bug and you ended up having to do this. So I got to help build out that team last year. It was a lot of fun. There were lots of phone calls. There were lots of documentation. For one particular customer, I generated 80 pages of documentation in 2.5 months, just on their OpenStack deployment, which was like 15 nodes. This is what we look like. That's me. So yeah, we were cool kids. I like to think we really weren't. There were 4 of us on the globe. So if I'm on all these phone calls, I'm an old Linux engineer. My vimRC is 400 lines long. And suddenly I'm generating 20 or 30 pages of documentation a day. So I needed a new workflow. So there was me, again, no hair, beard. My beard was a lot longer then. I've trimmed it up since I've become a salesman. I started writing all my stuff in ASCII-Doc. ASCII-Doc, if you don't know what it is, it's Markdown. So kind of like what's in Wikipedia or any other Markdown, like in GitHub. Very lightweight, very fast, very feature-rich. With ASCII-Doc, with about a week's practice, I can keep up with the speed of a phone call. So as I'm taking notes during the phone call, I'm just writing what is essentially the finished product in ASCII-Doc. So who's on a phone call with somebody, they scribble down all these notes and sideways on the scrap of paper, and then they have to turn around and put it in something, God forbid, a SharePoint. Hopefully at least like a Jive instance or something, but we've all got this thing. I pushed all that to Git because I'm an old engineer and I want all my stuff in version control because that's what God intended. Git, and we use GitLab. You know, we have an internal GitLab instance at Red Hat that for the group of people I had at the time pushes out to Jenkins. And one of the things ASCII-Doc very easily renders into is HTML. I then spun up an Apache server on an internal OpenStack instance, and the world can see it. So if I'm on this phone call for 2.5 hours with a customer to debug some ridiculously complex OpenStack problem, I'm keeping notes the whole time in ASCII doc. Within 15, 16 seconds of me pushing out to my Git repo, the sales guys like Danny have a finished product in pretty rendered HTML that they get to have for their reference, that's bookmarkable, that's out in the world, that they can copy and paste or print as a PDF and give to the customer, whatever needs to happen. I was pretty happy with myself. I just completely revolutionized this team's documentation workflow, and it was like on a Tuesday. I thought it was pretty cool. Well, I also do a lot of workshops for people. I'll go out with customers, I talk a lot about OpenStack, I talk a lot about atomic host, I talk a lot about Kubernetes. I do a lot of workshops. But so immediate benefits. ASCII doc, the notes can keep up with the pace. Since the HTML was being generated, within a minute of a call, I've got my stuff pushed out. Since the ASCII doc can Git or command line, the number of times I have to touch a mouse goes way down. Again, I'm an old Linux engineer. What's that?
But you use it on your phone,
What do you mean?
like for ASCII doc. It's hard to do on your phone.
Oh, I don't, no, I have an ASCII keyboard and 2 30-inch monitors. No, there's no fix for that. The phone, no. I'm not mobile optimized.
You can publish in EPUB or something.
Yeah, so ASCII doc will push out to EPUB, will push out to PDF, it'll push out to, you can actually, someone's, yeah, that just sucks. I use Swipe, but I'm an Android guy. But it'll also push, and there's a guy's working on a plugin for ASCII doc that will push out as a Slides.js presentation. It's a little kludgy. It's pretty awesome though. It's a little kludgy, but you can get there.
Race time simulator.
Yeah, like a reveal.js. So you just set a couple of arbitrary tags in ASCII doc and it sets all your separators and stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So, and because I needed spell check, this was the only detriment to it. I'm writing all this documentation, I had to spell check. My VimRC is 400 lines long, man. But Vim, there is no spell checker. At least not that I present. Is there one? Yeah, I never could find. I looked long and hard. I could not find a spell checker for Vim. So I ended up moving to Atom, which is the open source IDE that Google publishes, and I've been using it. It's pretty nice. I miss Vim. I really do. So, but what about workshops? Like I said, I go out and do a lot of workshops for customers. Like I'll do like an OpenStack install. I set up OpenStack on my laptop 8 or 10 times a week on average, with using like nested virtualization and KVM. So I take the same concept. Again, there's the bald guy with the beard. I take my ASCII doc installation, and this I toss in Ansible. And I have a workshop code, copy and paste stuff that I can publish into the ASCII doc. And I write the corresponding playbook to build out my infrastructure for me in Ansible. I keep them in the same Git repo. And I can start getting fancy because ASCII doc has variables. I can have Ansible set the variables for like IPs and things out of its facts into my documentation. So my documentation, so if I change an IP range for some reason that I'm doing in a demo for a customer site or for whatever, as long as I change it in Ansible, it changes in the documentation code automatically. Pretty cool stuff. Again, Jenkins renders my pretty ASCII doc and it builds out my infrastructure. And again, there's a Jenkins plugin for Ansible to run a playbook. Use it all the time. Easy peasy. So again, my pretty HTML goes out to my Apache server on OpenStack, whether internal or on people.redhat.com, or if it's just I deliver it directly to a customer with some script. And then I also get my infrastructure. And I've got playbooks that will do AWS. I've got playbooks that will do KVM, like on my laptop or on a physical host. I've been playing around with doing direct OpenStack stuff. As I start layering these products, I'll have a playbook that deploys OpenStack, and then I'll have a playbook that takes OpenStack, spins up 3 or 4 instances using the OpenStack module, and I configure a Kubernetes cluster on it. Young man in the back.
Can you talk about the way Ansible is going to talk to Ironic, and how you can kind of come around the back way using Jenkins to revision on a bare metal? Is that something that you've done?
I don't have it in an active playbook, but the stretch there, and in fact, the question I asked earlier, the big detriment there is, at least in 1.9, I'm on Fedora 23, so I'm still on an Ansible 1.9, importing YAML as a template gets a little hairy. pretty fast. And does anyone import a lot of, use Ansible, use YAML templates in Ansible? I'd love to find some information. I'm having a lot of trouble with it, and Ironic uses YAML template, the heat templates are all written in YAML. So when I import YAML into YAML, like I form the singularity in a black hole form. But it's totally doable. Haven't 100% gotten there yet for bare metal. Can do virtual machines easy. Bare metal, when I have to pull in Ironic, I have to pull in heat, doing a director setup. It's a little more problematic.
YAML on YAML.
Yeah, some of that hot YAML on YAML action.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then both of those things go out to the world. So now I've got a I've done this for 1 hour workshops. I've done this for half-day labs. I've done it for Atomic. I've done it for OpenStack. I've done it for CloudForms. I've done it for most of the cloud stack that Red Hat does. You get a pretty nice HTML. I was going to run one for you guys, but the OpenStack stuff takes about 45 minutes. And the VPN was being a little buggy. And my Jenkins server is inside the Red Hat VPN because I'm too lazy to set up authentication. So I just hide it behind the VPN. But this works. And this is so, I have this version control, this lockstep version control of my workshop and the corresponding infrastructure to deploy it. So when I do a workshop for a customer, I give them the playbook at the end. I throw this out on GitHub. We go through the workshop, they get these copy and paste instructions that I put together. And I say, hey, you want to deploy this out on your own, in your own lab, on your own laptop, on your own whatever? Run the playbook. Go tweak the variables for what you need. Pretty awesome stuff. Put it all together. Write up my documentation for customers and workshops in ASCII doc, write a corresponding Ansible playbook. Then I push it all into GitLab. GitLab, GitHub, same animal. Obviously we use GitLab internally, and that's what I use most of the time. GitLab triggers a Jenkins build. Jenkins renders all my pretty HTML or whatever format I want, if I want to push it out in EPUB or PDF or whatever. Jenkins then pushes the HTML out to wherever web server I want to serve it from. Be it, my default one inside Red Hat is running on actually OpenStack Icehouse. So it's this old OpenStack cluster that we have internally just for scratch VMs. Jenkins then uses Ansible to create my infrastructure wherever I tell it to. Again, whether it's pushing it out to Amazon, whether it's setting it up in a customer lab. If I can SSH to it from where I'm launching Ansible, I can do it. All I need is SSH access. It's one of the genius bits of Ansible. And then, whether it's my laptop, whether it's AWS, whether it's OpenStack directly, some other cloud, anything. And then I have a version control workshop with corresponding lab infrastructure. It's ready to roll. And I do it 8 or 10 times a week at a minimum. And in my head, for my particular use case, where I don't have a dev or an ops team, but I have to automate my software changes, I have to automate my infrastructure changes, and I have to collaborate, I call that DevOps. That's what I do. And that's what I've got. So what do you guys think? Is that the worst thing ever?
Horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it works for me. And I've got other people playing around with it and kind of iterating on it to bring in other stuff and try to make it cooler. Young man in the back.
So, caveat for everybody else, clearly Jamie and I work together. When I was walking through the cubes a couple weeks ago, and you had Ansible-ized OpenStack.
Yeah.
To the degree of automation from the deployment, right? And it's you, me, 10 developers, other 30 admin and engineer folks from Red Hat, talking about how you Ansible-ized OpenStack. Do you want to maybe do the 90-second big picture, what the impact is? Because I can dig in for 10 minutes and say how we do what we do, where we go out and do what we do.
Yeah.
But Ansible-izing it was a really big deal.
Yeah. So kind of the biggest things. My typical use case is running OpenStack on my laptop. So I create KVM VMs, RHEL 7, and then I deploy OpenStack on top of the VMs, and I do nested virtualization. Works just fine. It's not ready for production, and the guest VMs in the OpenStack instances aren't fast, but for a demo it works. And I can spin up a Kubernetes cluster, in this nested virtualization, and run 30, 40 containers on it to do sort of a demo for customers. Do it all the time. Some of the bigger challenges I ran into, I'm using the RHEL 7.2 image. And the one that really, really messed me up, and it was when you walked by, that was when Ted and I figured it out, was Cloud Init on the Red Hat 7.2 QCal, on the disk image. Cloud Init's enabled by default. And Cloud Init launches before SSH launches. and goes out and looks for something. So the first thing I do when I launch these VMs for the first time, first thing I do is remove cloud. Like, I'm sure it has a purpose, and I'll need it one day down the road, and I'll change my playbook at the time. But I get rid of it. I did Vert customize, and I don't know what we're doing in the image. I haven't had a chance to look into it, but I did like a Vert customize each disk before I launch each VM. I take our image and I set the host name and I set the IP. Vert customize spins up a tiny VM, and then like it'll set the host name, it'll set the root password. It has a bunch of parameters you can pass it. And since I need to be prescriptive about the IP addresses, yeah, it's in Vert utils. Yeah, since I need to be prescriptive about the IP addresses, I actually set in the host file for each of my KVM guests in the Ansible playbook, in the Ansible host file, I'll set the IP, I'll set the RAM, vCPUs, and all that stuff, because I'm writing the XML directly using the 1.9 Vert module. So I need to define the XML because that's what it uses. You know, I do a file lookup and then push out my XML file, define my VM, and then I take my Vert customize and I set my IP address. So then, and I do some fancy hoodoo with SSH keys, so I can do a completely unattended install. So I'll create an SSH key, push it in. At least I don't even have to do that anymore. Or I just do an SSH key scan once I push it in, and I make sure all those are in my laptop's host file.
Hacker at all?
No. It's easy. I'm simple, man. I'm not very smart. Keep it simple.
I think you're wrong.
Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah, but no, it was a blast. And Ted Brunell's another SA who's been doing OpenStack since before it was OpenStack. And he actually figured out the cloud init thing. And even though I was disabling it with Vert Customize, there's some anachron or something that's spawning it when you launch the image for the first time. Or it's like it's in a first boot file or something. So I have to actually stop the service. I have to, with Ansible system call will stop it. And then I just do it. I just have to use package. Or I used to use yum because the package is in 2. That documentation now is clear as it should be.
1.9.
1.9 had package.
Yeah.
I ran into something weird with it, but it could have just been me not knowing Ansible as well at the
Yeah,
time.
we're too, but there's a package out
That
there
might be
that
it.
says do all that stuff and you just chill it, so there's probably one like that as well.
Yeah, they're probably, it's some first boot thing, I'm sure, that I was running into. So I actually stop it and then actually do a yum remove, cloud init, which is gonna burn me down the road, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Yeah, so I've got a playbook. I didn't put the link up here because when I moved from Kilo to Liberty for OpenStack, I've sort of broken open vSwitch, and I haven't figured out how yet. The Kilo works like a champ. Liberty, it doesn't kick a bunch of errors, but it doesn't work quite right. So I'm still figuring that out. But there's actually a Git repo. If anyone wants to shoot me an email or something, if you guys want to play around with the playbooks and how I'm integrating with ASCII doc, I can shoot you the GitHub repo. You can pull it down and play with it. Cool. Have you got any questions, concerns?
So
Developer guy.
You briefly mentioned that you kind of saw Ansible and Puppet as serving different purposes. How do you think they average? Because me as a developer, I see them as largely fitting the same kind of niche.
You can get there with either one. And I'm parroting what the Ansible guys have told me, and I'm parroting what the CTO for Puppet told me when I was arguing with them one day. Puppet is configuration management at scale. So if you have 5,000 servers, you need to manage configuration for dynamically and do it very efficiently. That's what Puppet's for. That's why we put Puppet in Satellite 6. For configuration management, it's best of breed. Now you can since creating a new machine is kind of configuration management, I can write some scripts and I can start to get a little hacky, and I can make it provision a system for me. I'll toss some form in like we're using in Satellite 6, or I can just pixie boot or things or whatever. But you start to get away from what it excels at. And if not in performance and philosophy. And then Ansible's coming from the other direction. Ansible is the best thing I've ever seen to let me define and deploy a large scale infrastructure as code. I can write my code, I can repeatedly deploy an accurate environment, incredibly fast with incredibly simple syntax, incredibly powerful syntax. I can, in very few lines of code, define a very complex infrastructure. And if I don't want to learn another tool, I can write a bunch of playbooks and maintain a bunch of playbooks that will do configuration management for me. But that concept of drift management, that concept of all of those things that really make config management excel, that Puppet does out of the box, I have to add on myself into Ansible. And vice versa. All those things that Ansible does very well to provision systems, I've got to start extending Puppet in weird ways using arbitrary scripts and doing a bunch of stuff. So they're complements in my head. You know, I deploy my infrastructure with Ansible, and then once I've deployed it and I have it up and running, then when I configure it and it's doing its job, then I use Puppet to maintain that at scale over time.
So, I want to counter you a little bit.
Do it.
So just a little bit background for you and everybody else in the room. I'm part of the Ansible team, came over as part of the expert team. We're on the consulting side.
Yeah.
So on the scalability side, we do have clients managing 10,000 nodes at the same time with Ansible.
Sure.
What that comes down to though is it's a function of RAM from the control node.
Okay.
So that's the limitation. Is obviously
Okay, so that's where it starts.
right.
It
So
starts
as long as you can throw RAM at a machine, you can scale it however much you want. So it's going to be a function of RAM for the most part.
And that agentless bit, where I'm just using an SSH transport, that's awesome when I'm deploying my stuff. But if I need to execute an arbitrary command on one box, I can do it faster with Puppet. At least, maybe we'll just cause that known Puppet longer. But that arbitrary command, drift management, does Ansible have a way to really configure, calculate drift management?
So there is, and I think it was a design initiative when we were just a startup, right? We needed a moneymaker, so that's where Tower came into play. So if you needed to schedule things that wasn't cron or some other way of scheduling playbooks to run sequentially, right out of the box on the open source side, there was.
But not just running on 50 boxes, but actual drift management. That box A is 17% different in the following ways from box B. And
Yeah,
Puppet.
and that's a function of Tower.
Yeah. Okay, so it's got that cooked in a little bit.
I wanted to ask a question about that, because that kind of completely deviates from everything I see on, if you call it Git issues at all for Ansible. Every single time someone asks for a feature that deals with drift management, it's instantly denied. So they never let anything in there. They don't do anything like Puppet Purge. They never let anything. They never let any managed features. You have to build your own scripts to go loop through the entire file system or a directory, find out if all the, if you have any stray files that should be there. Ansible doesn't support that.
Yeah, and again, that's the thing. That's what Tower was intended to do.
So Tower does that?
Yes, it didn't always do that, but it started to do recently. You can monitor your system state between a machine and to itself, and between two different machines.
Okay.
If you need to.
Again, once you and you were talking about it's the control server is a function of RAM. The biggest infrastructure I can think of would be 13, 14, 15,000 nodes. How much RAM would you have to have in an Ansible Tower server to push out that consistently?
The general rule of thumb is about 4 gigs of RAM per 100 forks.
So 100 threads at a time, 4 gigs, 15,000, and I've got a 30-minute patching window. Again, they just attack problems differently. Puppet scales, Puppet has different bottlenecks. They bottleneck in a different way because they're client-based and just the way they were handling threading internally. But yeah, so you can get there with either. I think of Ansible to deploy my environment, and I think of Puppet to manage it at scale.
What about Chef? That's another management.
I don't like Ruby. I don't know what that is. Ruby's that thing I had to put in /opt to satisfy some guy.
You don't like Ruby, but you're using Puppet?
You know what, man? Fair point. Fair point. It's more, in my experience, Chef means I'm writing Ruby. And Puppet has that weird pseudo language that lays on top of it.
It's not Ruby, you don't can't it. Puppet's Puppet language.
Well,
yeah, Puppet's Puppet.
Until you
and it's probably, if it's running Ruby, I honest to God didn't know it was running Ruby.
Yeah,
I assumed it was Perl, like all bad things. But if it's running Ruby, all right. But I don't see the Ruby, and Chef, I have to see the Ruby, and I don't like that.
But you said if you wanted to run one command on thousands of machines, if you would prefer to use Puppet to do that. Are you talking about in collective?
Yes. Okay. I would be, and
that's not
my Puppet chops in production have miles of rust on them.
Okay. Because that's separate from Puppet.
Yeah, it is.
It just uses it.
Yeah. I would actually probably write a script to do a bunch of Puppet for me.
Okay.
And manage a bunch of manifests and stuff. But again, so I'm getting hacky there. but I also have been an everyday admin for like 5 years. So the world has passed me by on that. Anybody else want to grill me about something I don't know about? I also can't do a backspin. Yeah, God, but no. On that note, yeah, but that's my take on DevOps, folks, and it's a little practical and it's a little not company line probably, but you know, it's gotten me through a bunch of bad times, and I got to use the Men in Black picture.
You did.
I called it a win. Cool, thanks, y'all.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Jamie, appreciate it. The Otimo guys, hanging tough in the front row, love it. We do them monthly. Some of you guys, I see it, every session. We took a reprieve there because Ansible Fest in London seemed to be eating up a lot of cycles. You know what I'm talking about. So we'll probably do it this time next month. I think most of you are in the user group, the meetup group. If not, join it. And if you have suggestions, drop them in. I mean, that's how we've been coming up with the topic material each time. It's based off of what everyone asks for. Everyone was talking about 2.0 last time, so that's why we did it in this meetup. So if you have material you'd like to present, I mean, it's a group thing. I just kind of try and corral and put up a little bit of a fence, but Mike from AOL, see back here, you came up with a presentation last time, so if there's something you think would be cool for the rest of us to see, definitely drop it in the meetup group. Other than that, thanks again for coming out. Love to see a full house. I'll reiterate, Fierce software. We sell this stuff. So if you want a tower trial, go to our website. There's a 10-node tower trial, fiercesw.com. We take your information and send you an email, but you get to start playing with it. We are very symbiotic with our Red Hat counterparts, our Ansible counterparts, basically go shoulder to shoulder, and listen to your pain points, see if there's something that we can do to mitigate. That's it. We got plenty of beer. I'm in no hurry, so beer, pizza, help us out. It's less we have to take home. Swag, get it. Thanks again.